What? Well, you know, it's really, I've been on a bunch of boards, and in general, we almost always, at some point, had a discussion about how you get minutes down to just the absolute essential facts.
Yeah.
But I think with who we are, you know, and some resident wants to, you know, second guess something 6 months later, and some issue that came up 2 years ago is brought back up again. I think these are unbelievably perfect minutes if we can afford you. You know, I don't know how much of your day goes into these things, but they're fantastic. You know, if it works for Grant's budget.
That works.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Great. Ready for fall?
Slippers on.
Shall I go outside and see if they're all congregating outside?
I mean, I'm happy to do that if you want to.
Yeah.
I don't think our board members would be doing that, would they? I just left Audrey. She implied she was coming.
Yeah, I didn't hear otherwise. Okay. I'm guessing Carolyn may not make it, given her surgery.
No, she said she would be here. I saw
Okay.
her today. Yeah.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good.
Hi. How are you? I'm good. Good. I can't believe I've grown up with this. What, baby?
I haven't seen him in forever.
He's 7
I think I met him when he was like 2. He just had a birthday on the 12th.
Yeah. So grown up.
But still a cutie.
Hey. She's on her way, I think.
Yeah.
I've seen her today, and you've seen her, she's already been in 5 meetings today.
All right.
Let's have the rest of us. And there's a massage. Excellent. Wow, look at you. Yeah, no, I meant how well you're walking and moving.
Oh yeah, for the moment. Don't talk it up.
Okay. I won't say anything.
I think nothing's that, you haven't had any surgery or anything, right?
No, I
Yeah,
postponed
surgery
it
got put
until.
off, but she is
till
looking much
January.
better.
Yes.
Next time I saw her, I thought, you know, gosh, the surgery was fantastic.
No, I had it postponed. The holidays are coming. I have grandchildren. So, am I sitting in the right seat? Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, yes. A quorum is 4. We have reached quorum. I haven't heard from Miss Oliver, but let me.
Oh, she's on the way.
I figured.
Yeah, she's on the way.
I bet she wouldn't mind if we went ahead and got started. We can move through the preliminary work. When you're ready, I'll let you get sorted. Before my bathroom.
You left me today. I was looking for you.
Well, I had another meeting, so I went straight to the other meeting.
Yeah.
I think you had things under control.
Yeah,
That was a good meeting. It was nice
Yeah,
to
it
see
was.
some new bodies.
it really was. How you doing?
Oh. Hey, Miss Lorna, how are you? I'm
How are
good.
you? I've been trying to get in contact with you.
You have the right number?
I don't have your number.
Well, let me get you.
Let me lock it in because I won't. Let me turn this off actually, because I won't answer.
No internet.
Miss Harriet, can you go look at my car and get the phone? Get my phone.
Well, she doesn't have hers either, don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll change
No, I
it
still
later.
want my phone. My door's
We'll
not
get it to
locked.
you.
Yeah, go get it. Yeah.
But that's not good.
Yeah.
Got a kid, it's not-
Yeah, the drivers.
All right. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's nice to see you all. It is Monday, October 22nd, and this is the regular meeting of the Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority. And now that we're called to order, I'll ask for a roll call of commissioners.
Chair Jones,
I'm present.
Vice Chair Rector, Commissioner Bellamy, Commissioner Oliver, Commissioner Osteen,
Here.
Commissioner Slaughter,
Here.
Commissioner Talbert.
Here.
Thank you. And now we have time for a brief moment of silence. Thank you. We'll begin this evening with public comments. Oh, here we go. Miss Oliver's here. We'll give her a chance to get settled, and then we'll have public comments.
Hey there.
How are you?
I'm good. I've been the rest of the day.
All right. If there's anyone who would like to make public comments at this time, feel free to join us.
I'll go first, and maybe you'll get some others. I'm Brandon Collins. I work for FAR, Public Housing Association of Residents, at 1000 Preston Avenue, Suite C, 434-984-3255, and you can find us online, www.farcville.org. And FAR is the duly elected, duly recognized Resident Advisory Council and Resident Advisory Board for residents of public housing in Charlottesville, which gives us a great deal of responsibility. And you have a number of things to consider. I don't have a written report for you this evening, but I think my words should suffice. Been a busy day on the redevelopment front and a busy month since we last met. Amazingly positive steps towards making redevelopment a reality and bettering our community through your actions and with the help of others, and we're really excited about that. Just, some words of caution. Today has been kind of a strange day where we started off talking to residents about one thing, and by the end of the day, much of that maybe has changed, and just hoping that CRHA has this, the understanding and the sort of recognition that this is work that's been going on for many years, and really requires patience and diligence with residents on all kinds of different fronts. It's not just a series of meetings or a survey or a workshop or some door knocking. It's all these things combined that has gotten us to a point where residents are leading the charge for redevelopment and really making it a resident-directed process. So that when we approach new things in this whole process, that may be a shock to some residents, and And that's something I think we all have to take into consideration, that some extra time and care and love needs to be put in working with folks to have everybody fully informed so that we can move forward together. I think the things that are being discussed are generally positive and are going to be great for the community and good for the public housing community, good for the housing authority, and good for FAR. There does seem to be some increased burden on our organization in terms of engaging residents on this resident-directed process, which we openly embrace. We are happy to take on that work. We know we need to do that work, and we're going to do that work. But do keep in mind there is added burden on FAR to really make sure things go right, and we need your support in that. We really don't need your financial support in terms of capacity, but we could use some of your mental support and other types of support so that we have the capacity to do expanded resident outreach and really make things work the way they need to. One other thing that we could really use help with as we are expanding our workload is asking the Housing Authority to also expand its workload. I know that's hard to hear, but it's hard for us to take on a lot right now as well. But we've been hearing consistently that we can't have these conversations about redevelopment without them turning instantly into issues of maintenance and customer service. Over the past 6 months or so, I would say I hear from at least 12 residents per month with difficult questions related to maintenance, related to customer service. That's a lot for FAR, I gotta say, and we're currently working with a number of residents to address some issues. These conversations about redevelopment are going nowhere if every meeting I go to turns into a meeting about somebody's leaky pipes or their air conditioner's not working, their heat's not on, they have mold in their house, and their issues aren't being addressed. So what we would ask of you is, as we embrace this massive energy and this massive effort and put it into redevelopment and really transforming the housing authority and transforming public housing in Charlottesville, we need to put that kind of attention and that kind of effort into day-to-day maintenance improvements and efforts towards improving customer service. I think we all have really high hopes for the housing manager who's coming on board November 1st. And we really have some really high expectations that residents will have visible, tangible improvements to their day-to-day life in public housing. Otherwise, we're going to get bogged down in this, and this really has to be what we've called a parallel track. It has to be a meaningful track. It's just as important as a site plan for South First Street. It's just as important as figuring out our relocation plan. Is just as important to fix the doorknobs on the people's doors that need doors, to address their mold issues and get the work done that needs to be done. So we really encourage you to embrace that as part of the effort and make that a reality. And I have the desire to go on and on and on about that, but I'm not going to. I will say CRHA staff, I think, may need a touch up on the eviction policy and some of the things that we fought so hard to get into that policy. Some of the fighting we did involved very public protests and arrests and a lot of broken hearts and a lot of broken families and a lot of hard times and hard feelings amongst all of us. And when we see parts of the eviction policy being ignored, we get exceedingly grumpy about it. So I really think that's an important thing for CRHA to also dig into. So thank you.
Are there other comments at this time? If you want to speak from there, you can.
I don't need to exercise.
All right.
I'll be there. Excuse me. I think y'all, like I'm gonna go, so I haven't been to none of the meetings, but I will tell you when I get there. The reason why. Because y'all doing a good job. And I told we had a meeting this afternoon at 3 o'clock, and I told them, I had a new home one time. That was a perfect nice feeling. But I lost my home after 20 years. But God gave me blessed for 20 years anyway. So I really enjoyed that. So the reason why I didn't come down, I got a speech problem. Mr. Davy.
Mr. Jackson, how
All
are you,
right.
sir?
All right, sir. But I was just saying, like I told them I got a speech problem. I told them I had a home, and if everybody ain't had a home, that's a blessing. And that just like in another world. And I really enjoy it. But like people's complaining about Crescent Hall, that's my home, you know. I got a few problems, but I know they're gonna be solved. So what I told God last night that I wish they would just tie this tongue up, get the devil out of my mouth because I want to talk. My late wife used to say, this is what your problem is, you talk too much. So I love to talk. Mrs. Bradford over there. I love to talk, but I don't like to be tied tongue like this. You know what they call it. But anyway, that's why I'm down here tonight. And one more thing, and I'm gonna let you know this. Why I dressed up like this, I was standing in the front Sunday morning. This young gentleman, he know me, but I can't play right now. And I said, man, I soon be 77 years old. He said, you a young man. I said, what? He said, I'm 80. I said, God bless you, boy. Yes, you gonna look. So then most times he said, where you church? I said, Pleasant Plain. Pleasant Plain? Yeah, man. I said, you know, most churches have 2 St. John, 2 St. Luke, 2 St. You know. They asked her Sunday morning, said, what church, where you going at? He said, going to church. Which one? Well, we got one only, Pleasant Plain. People get lost, I can't pronounce the name. My preachers used to tell them, we Pleasant, we Plain, we're definitely Plain. And we all gonna stay the same. So that one tonight I had to get that off my chest because I couldn't sleep last night. And said my ordination, Reverend Kennedy Edwards ordained me. Because my pastor was his home in Alabama at the time, so he had to get him to do it for me. And they thought it was a church going, but that was me. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm a person that when you see me, like a smile she got, I'm the same way tomorrow. But it's bad, I want to go to my grave with somebody hating me. You can ask all the people down there at the high rise. They come and say, hi, boyfriend, my word, hi, girlfriend. And that's how we live. Everything is nice. And I'm naked with white and black. They was all split. I tried it the same way. I said, hi, girlfriend. She said, hi, boyfriend. I said, hi, girlfriend. So, and I love Crescent Hall. See, me and my late wife, we moved there in 95 to 2011. She died in 2011. So I love her so well that I went away for some like 3-4 years. And Miss Lockton, she called me. She said, Mr. Jackson, I said, yeah, do you want to come back to Crescent Hall? And I was standing in the place going up 20-some steps. I said, when can that come? She said, I'll be there at 4:30. I said, at 4:30, I'll be there up there. So I down, and I'm there and there. But see, we got through this problem, but I know they're going to be fixed. Because I talked to the master last night, so I'm going to let go of that. So y'all have a blessed, and all y'all have a blessed one.
Sir, before you leave, you mind telling us your name?
Oh, I didn't. I'm sorry. James Thomas Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr.
Jackson.
God bless you.
Mr. Jackson, I just want to comment, I enjoyed your input at our meeting today and tonight,
Thank you.
but I'm taking this time to say, that is a good-looking suit.
I try to catch me another way. I'm mourning now. It's been a long time, since 2011 up to 90 years. All right, man. You all right, man?
Good evening. My name is Annette Wilcox, a current resident of Monticello Vista Apartments on 1400 Monticello Road in Charlottesville, Virginia. Last weekend, I noticed that there's a new change going on where Rita Tagam Sam bookstore that was up for over the years was closed down. If I have any questions about new stores and changes going on at the down Potomac. I'll try to remember to get information from the neighborhood developer. Brian Haluska would be best, or and he has from now on. If I want to shop for books, I'll try to remember to shop at the New Dominion Bookshop, where I buy tickets for seasonal choir concerts held at church. And where I buy tickets. I think the New Dominion Bookstore is a nice place.
It is. Thank you.
You're welcome. Wait a minute, this is a retail Quilts Unlimited that's being moved.
Oh, I see.
Yes, I don't know whether, I'll check with my friend Joan Fenton.
Yes, she's the one to ask. Thank you, Miss Wilcox. Miss Bell.
Hi, my name is Sonia Bell. I reside at Riverside. My comment is tonight, I've been going to the redevelopment meetings, and my concern is y'all haven't talked about talking to the people at First Street before you get started. I think that's a main concern because they need to know what's going on before y'all start development, putting people here, putting people there. They need to know what's going on and get their comments. So I'm thinking before y'all move forward, we need to get out some flyers or something and get some of these people in meetings so they know what's going on in their neighborhood before you put these new buildings up and all that. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other comments at this time? All right, there'll be an opportunity at the end of the meeting as well. Next on our agenda, if any commissioners have any comments or thoughts?
I have a comment. Well, actually a question. Brandon said that some of the eviction policy was being ignored. Would you mind, Mr. Brandon, coming up and letting us know what parts we need to address, if any?
It might be best to connect with legal aid on some of the exact issues. And I don't, want to violate confidentiality in any way, but I know of a couple of instances where a resident was told not to go to court, and possession was sought when that resident didn't go to court. Which is a huge one, which is one we deliberately made sure got into the policy, even though everybody said, oh, no, we don't do that anymore. There have been some other pieces of the policy that I think are not necessarily being adhered to, but I think that's probably best to deal with our legal folks on that stuff. But I do think it's worth a solid training and solid understanding of what that policy says and what the do's and don'ts are about that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I'd make one comment to Ms. Bell. I can assure you that Commissioner Oliver is the strongest advocate of that concept that you expressed to us about getting the South First Street existing residents on board with plans and find out what their interests are. And she and I were both at a meeting today when she passionately advocated exactly that, and everybody at that meeting heard her loud and clear. So I think that's lining up to happen in the near future.
Have you, I'm sorry, have you all thought about, Brandon was saying that the redevelopment meetings, maintenance issues, because they're a great concern, are coming up, so it's kind of hard to move forward with the redevelopment meeting. Have you all thought about maybe bringing like a concern sheet for maintenance. And when those things come up, so that we're not putting people on the back burner or making them feel like they're brushed off by trying to keep the meeting moving, maybe pass a sheet around for those persons who have a maintenance concern and have them write their maintenance concern down and give that maintenance concern to maintenance afterwards. But addressing them to let them know that this is for the redevelopment committee meeting. Though you have maintenance service issues and concerns we want to address, if you can get them down on a sheet of paper, we can get back with you later so that we can move forward in the meeting. And then that way it doesn't fall, between the cracks or put on the back burner, and it never gets addressed, and people won't walk away feeling like what they have to say is not important.
Yep, I think that's a very good point, and it's especially a good point because the person that's making that, they feel like they've registered it. Where if we're not there receptive at that point, at that issue, it could easily be, fall through the cracks. So, good point.
And also maybe at the beginning of the meeting addressing that verbally so that everybody knows, because some people don't know meeting protocol. So just to make it clear so that everybody is on one accord that this it's not a maintenance committee meeting, it's redevelopment. Though maintenance issues could come up in new redevelopment, that if it's for issues that we having right now, let's just forward that to the maintenance committee, and somebody would get back with them and make sure that the person who receives it gets back with the people within 24 hours or 48 hours to say that we at least received your concerns.
Thank you.
Could somebody tell me what's the purpose of the maintenance committee?
That's on the agenda. We're getting there.
Okay.
Thank you, Miss Oliver. As is redevelopment, so we'll marry it all together. I suggest if you all are willing, we move to looking at minutes from our last board meeting. They're under tab 1. And I'll entertain a motion.
I had a couple of very, very minor issues, just grammar more than anything, that I have passed along to our minutes keeper. But beyond that, I would move approval of the minutes.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The minutes pass. Tonight we have with us Miss Kelly from the city, who's going to give us an update on the Pollux Branch Bridge, or Miss Oliver's Bridge, as we call it.
Good evening. For the record, Brenda Kelly, Redevelopment Manager with the city. The agenda item in front of you tonight is to request your approval of easements on your property in order to install a pedestrian bridge. Quite a few months ago, we talked about a proposed pedestrian bridge and went through the process. We are moving along a little slower than we thought, but Ms. Oliver's been very involved. We're now looking at a new bridge, and we're looking at restoring some native habitat along Pollux Branch. The bridge will eventually connect to the west end of Rockland Avenue with the South First Street property. There are existing trails in place now, however, there are no easements for those. And we recognize, the city recognizes that there will be redevelopment going on in the property. So while the consultants were surveying the area to install the bridge, they also put together this document in your package to propose some easements in place, because the city cannot install the bridge without having the proper legal easements in place. Otherwise, folks using the bridge and the trail will be trespassing on your property. So we're requesting that you approve these easements. And what the language says on this easement document is that as your redevelopment occurs, and if this trail location moves, the easements move with the trail. Or we can come back at a future time when you get plans in place for redevelopment of South First Street and relocate the easements and put those in a permanent location. With the easements in place, the city's Parks and Rec Department will also be responsible for maintenance of the trail in this easement area. And they'll also be looking down by the bridge to do some maintenance with the existing native vegetation and the habitat and the new landscaping that will be installed in that area. Miss Oliver, did I cover everything?
No, I think you did. I think you did.
There was a bit in here about potential lighting?
Yes,
The proposal now is to install conduits with the bridge. And I think the utilities folks will be looking at the Rockland Avenue because that is a dead-end right-of-way, a street, looking to work with Dominion to put a light down on that end. But that is the only proposal at this time for lighting.
Okay.
I just had 2 questions. Have you all had conversation with Charlottesville Area Police Department in reference to after this is put into place, how security would be done, or if maybe they would be doing a drive-through patrol in the area or anything like that?
We've had conversations with the police and the fire department that this would be going in. I'm not sure how much more they would step up patrol or whatever, but we could remind them that this is going on and at your request.
And my second question was, I didn't see anything about maintenance and upkeep after this was put into place. Have we had a conversation or thought about the maintenance and upkeep, the responsibility?
When the easements are put in place, then Parks and Recreation will be responsible for anything in those easement areas, the maintenance, which would include the bridge itself.
And that's afterwards?
Yes.
Is that a contract for a certain amount of time, or is that as long as the bridge exists?
As long as the bridge is in there and the easements are in place. If you'll see on the Rockland Avenue side, the bridge will be connecting to public right-of-way, which is Rockland Avenue right-of-way, so that's already city property, so it's your side of the property where the city needs those easements to be put into place.
And I have one more question. Do you think the private personal property owner would be willing to come to some of the redevelopment committee meetings?
Right now, you are the private property owner. The rest is the Rockland Avenue right-of-way, so that's city property.
Okay.
But Rockland Avenue residents have been involved in this process, and they've been notified. One property owner there on the south side of Rockland Avenue has asked for the city to work with him on putting a fence along his property line. So I think the legal department and Parks and Rec will be working with that property owner during the construction. But other than that, you are really the only property owner affected at this time.
Okay.
And the trail exists now, and it's been operating without easement, and in fact, this actually gives us some more protections.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we do have the neighborhoods, people who are attending the redevelopment committee. The Ridge Street, I just had a meeting with the Ridge Street neighborhood. And the Hartmill Road, we've had some folks from Hartmill Road and also attend both the bridge meetings and the redevelopment meetings. So they are, and we're going to be probably bringing more in because some things has changed.
And no concerns?
Well, and I'm hoping this will create.
The Ridge Street group has really willing to give us support.
Yeah.
Okay.
But our residents have been asking for a safe way to get across the creek up Rockland to Avon to catch buses and be on that side of town. So this is something our residents have asked for a long time.
Correct.
And so I really actually am excited about the partnership with the city to be able to provide
And that's why
that.
the city was looking at doing this.
Yeah. So are there other comments, questions?
No, I just want to make sure that the private residents were, interacting as well.
Yes, they are. So the process is if you approve this easement, then it needs to go on a city council agenda for them to accept your approval or some
Okay.
document. Parks and Rec will be doing it.
So we need to take an official vote approving the proposed easements to make possible to put an easement on the trail that runs along the backside of the property and for the bridge. Is there anyone who would like to make that motion?
You said for the easement for the...
For the public trail and bridge.
Yeah, I can do it. I move.
I'll second.
Fair enough.
She made the,
She
Yeah,
said
I wanted to make a motion that we move to accept to approve the easement of the public trail and the bridge on the property.
And a second from Ms. Slaughter. All in favor?
Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. and Miss Oliver. Both of you have worked on this project for a good year now, so. And Chris Jinsik, who isn't here, but has put in a lot of time. Thank you. Next on our agenda, if you'll look under tab 3, we have an update on our annual planning and 5-year plan process. And it's going to end with a request to you all to have a work session now in the next month, so be thinking about scheduling. And Mr. Duffield, I'll let you brief us.
Thank you. Chair Jones, members of the commission, behind tab 3 is a memo summarizing the annual plan and 5-year plan update process thus far. I'll read the memo. As dear commissioners, as you're aware, CRHA is in the process of redrafting its 5-year annual plan documents to guide the organization as it works to serve our residents in the coming years. To date, CRHA has hosted 4 site meetings and included the annual and 5-year planning topics in 1 resident services committee meeting. CRHA plans to host site meetings at Riverside, Mickey, Madison, and Madison Avenue over the next 2 weeks, and outreach to our single-family home residents as well. To date, the site meetings have occurred at West Haven, Crescent Halls, South 1st Street, and 6th Street. Below are listed several of the key concerns that have been raised during the course of the annual plan and 5-year plan discussion. On page 2, you see a proposed implementation schedule, continued community input up until at least November 15th of this year. And the draft plan goes to the board on November 26th. We open the 45-day comment period, and then in mid-January, seek commission approval and then submittal to HUD. Within the packages is a copy of the annual plan, which includes the 5-year plan goals and objectives, and comprise the majority of the document itself. As Chair Jones mentioned moments ago, it would be beneficial for all involved if the commission could convene a work session, certainly to include the public, to discuss further sort of the key objectives we're looking for out of the 5-year and annual plans.
I have one question. So the concerns that I see are just, I guess combined as one from each site that y'all visited. How do we know where to start with each concern if we don't know which concern belongs to which AMP? Or, because I see we have some stuff that belongs to Crescent Halls, and then some stuff that may belong to 6th Street. So how do we know? How are we taking this list and saying, okay, 6th Street wants to work on this and Crescent Hall wants to work on that, because everything is combined together. So how do we approach the list to say this is where we're going to start from?
Well, great question. And I do think, the annual plan, as you'll see, takes these concerns and sort of, we get to choose our goals, but they, each one of these typically will fit under a broader goal. So, if customer service is actually sort of a city, agency-wide goal, and so within the annual plan, we might have a goal that says something like improve customer service, and then list out some measures of what that looks like. And so I think you're exactly right. We need to take these and pull out the essence of what's there to create goals for our agency to work on so that we can measure our progress.
I think especially important because some goals that we've met probably will come off of this 5-year
Exactly.
plan.
Well, we
And
get to
then the
start
new
from
goals-
scratch, so we
right.
get brand new.
Right, so as we take things off and we put things on here, we need to know exactly how we're going to address them and where. This is a good place to start, but I just think they need to be broken down more so we know what we're addressing and where.
Right. So that's the point of having a good work session.
And walking out of this process with a true action plan, prioritization. No, that's an excellent point.
is it at the will of the board to try and schedule something quickly now, or do you want to wait till the end of the meeting?
I have my calendar out.
Okay. If we're, Grant, is the week of either the week of the 12th of November or the week of the 19th? Is the 19th too late for you?
We can do the 19th.
Or the week of the,
The 12th is good too.
I'm looking at those weeks,
Yeah,
I understand.
The week of the 19th is Thanksgiving. I would
Oh,
suggest that people are going
thank
to be out of
you, you're
town
right.
and
Yeah.
family are going
Let's look at the week of the 12th, thank
Yeah.
you. Mr. Bellamy may be the hardest to schedule, but we can also look potentially at the daytime meeting.
I'm available during the day, the 12th and the 13th only.
Okay, and evenings? You have, or daytime's better for you?
Daytimes are better for me.
Okay.
the 12th and the 13th.
Good.
Isn't the 12th like Veterans Day?
The 12th is Veterans Day.
So the 13th.
13th is fine for me.
The 13th is fine. We have a standing meeting already at noon on the 13th. We could meet prior to that or after that. You're not here? Okay.
So can we do the week of the 26th?
Well, our board meeting is that night. We need to approve the annual
Oh.
plan on the 26th. So there's the 19th prior to Thanksgiving. The 19th or 20th.
The 19th or the 20th during the day, I'm available right now.
Okay.
Are you here then, Miss Oliver? During the day? The day of the 19th or 20th, what is better for you, Mr. Osteen?
Both those 2 days, both fine.
Okay, I'm also open both of those days in the morning. Do we want to, let's do it on the 19th because there's already redevelopment on the 20th.
Do we know how long the meeting is, maybe?
At least an hour, probably 2.
It's 9 a.m. doable?
Is 9 a.m. too early?
No, not for me.
What? Why are you looking at me like that, Miss Oliver?
It's fine.
Good.
Okay.
Okay.
Miss Carolyn.
So
Is
9
that all
a.m.
right for you, an early morning? Is 9 a.m. all right with you, Mr. Osteen? All right.
Where are we going to meet?
Yeah, where?
I can work on securing a location here in City Hall.
Is this a public meeting?
Yes.
9 a.m. is too early if it's a public meeting.
House?
I'm just saying if we want residents involved, it is residents. It may be prohibited. Starting their day, getting their kids out the door.
So now, as an individual who like comes over and does the bus, why is 9 o'clock too?
9:30?
The buses come. The last bus comes at 8.
Would 10 o'clock be okay?
10 is fine with everyone?
I'm sorry, Mr. Bellamy, I'm just speaking from a 6-child ratio.
All right. 10 a.m. on Monday the 19th will be a work session on the annual plan. That doesn't mean that, any input isn't welcome prior to that. You can give it to a commissioner, you can give it to a property manager, you can give it to Grant. And we will, property managers and Grant will be seeking input from the sites that haven't had a meeting yet prior to the 19th.
Mr. Bellamy, how soon you think you can let us know about that location?
Grant will find a location. I'm sure we'll have it at one of our community centers. It'll either at South First Street or West Haven. Do you all on the board have a preference? Shall we try South First Street at 10 a.m.?
Let's do South First Street. Great.
Great, thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Next on our agenda is redevelopment update. Mr. Osteen, would you like to share with us a brief update?
The relocation principles listed first? Or
Oh, actually, please, my apologies, Mr. Norris. We have Mr. Norris here to give us. I just am not used to having you. I'm so excited you're here.
My apologies.
No problem. Thank you, Chairwoman Jones and Commissioners and Mr. Duffield. It's great to be with you all this evening. I'm Dave Norris, your newly hired redevelopment project coordinator. Good evening. So I wanted to just give a quick update on a few redevelopment related tasks. I don't know, for the redevelopment principles, I guess we'll consider those next. Basically, we are moving forward. As you know, we put out a request for proposals for a development team to assist the Housing Authority in proceeding with the redevelopment work. And the redevelopment committee recommended the approval of the team led by Riverbend Development. We are working on a memorandum of understanding to sort of codify that agreement, and hopefully we'll have one any day now. So, but that's moving forward, and I think we're all sort of on the same page about what needs to happen. Now it has been a little, as Mr. Collins said earlier, it's been a little bit of a topsy-turvy day in terms of thinking about the best way to phase in redevelopment. You know, we came into today with one sort of general idea of how redevelopment might get started, and now we're maybe at a different place. So, which actually would expedite the work of improving housing conditions for our residents. So, at the redevelopment committee meeting tomorrow at 12 o'clock at South First Street, we'll be discussing that further and potentially getting on the same page about the phasing for redevelopment and how to proceed there. That is a public meeting, so anybody is invited. Ms. Bell, I want to follow up on Ms. Bell. I absolutely agree with your comment about the need for resident engagement, and as Mr. Osteen said, that's something that Ms. Oliver has been really strong on. We are looking forward to working with FAR and with Enterprise on really stepping up our resident engagement around redevelopment. And also Colin Arnold, who's an architect and planner, has been brought on board to help facilitate some of those discussions about site planning and working with our residents to come up with some visions for how redevelopment might happen. Absolutely, resident engagement is absolutely central to that process. Funding is also central to that process. We expect that federal low-income housing tax credits will provide upwards of 75% or more of the funding necessary to redevelop our properties. There's a deadline coming up in March of 2019 for the next round of tax credits. So we're working pretty quickly to try to pull all the pieces together to meet that deadline. In addition to housing tax credits, low-income housing tax credits, we're looking at philanthropy. You may have heard that the Dave Matthews Band has agreed to donate the proceeds of their upcoming concerts to our redevelopment effort. We're very grateful for that support. And of course, the big enchilada is the potential for some city bond support. So we're continuing those discussions with city officials and city councilors, and we appreciate Councilor Bellamy's efforts and his leadership on that, and others. So funding is obviously, without the funding we can't do this work, so we've got to keep a focus on funding. Another key piece of this is getting our sites prepared for redevelopment. So, you know, we've been looking at a vacant piece of land at the south end of South First Street as potential step one for new construction. That land is in the process. We're in the process of doing some survey work on that land. We're hoping any day now to get the survey back so that we can proceed with subdividing that property, which will allow us to proceed with the necessary approvals to start with construction there as soon as possible. We also have to go through a demolition disposition process with HUD, and so a few of us will be meeting with HUD officials on November 14th on that very subject. Levy Avenue, which of course is another potential development site, has some separate kind of challenges because it has been for many years the site of a service station and gas station. So there are potential issues with chemicals there and contamination that we are currently undertaking a process with the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality to assess. And met with them this afternoon to talk about that whole process and their time frame for reviewing and also for the time frame for actually doing the remediation work. So their best guess is that it'll be at least a year and a half until that process is completed. That's assuming they don't find major contamination. If there's major contamination, it could take longer. That doesn't mean we can't proceed with planning for the site and all the necessary approvals, but we wouldn't be actually able to start construction for a minimum of 1.5 years. Relocation is a very important part of the redevelopment process. We want to make sure that no resident falls through the cracks as we proceed with redevelopment. And obviously we've been talking about Crescent Halls as the first group of residents that will be directly impacted. We have some redevelopment principles that the redevelopment committee has unanimously approved for adoption by this board tonight, and I believe those will be coming up next on your agenda. And those principles, I think, really go a long way towards reassuring residents we're not going to let anybody fall through the cracks. So you'll be talking about those in a moment. I also want to thank Ms. Kelly with the city, who's been helping to take a first stab at a draft of a site-specific redevelopment plan for Crescent Halls, and she's making good progress on that. Redevelopment is not just investing in physical capital and improving our building stock, but it's also investing in human capital. And so we want to make sure that we use the redevelopment process to maximize economic opportunities for our residents, help our residents climb the economic ladder. Section 3 is a big piece of that. Ms. Johnson and others have been really forceful in advocating for a bold commitment to resident hiring, resident contracting through the redevelopment process. And so part of our visit in November with the HUD officials is also a meeting with some folks from Chicago about their Section 3 project and how we can emulate some of their success here in Charlottesville. In addition to Section 3, we want to look across the board at how we can help our residents improve financial stability and build wealth through this redevelopment process, to include the potential for home ownership for residents as part of this process. So you'll be hearing more about that along the way. Last thing I'll say, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. We are looking to our partners with Enterprise to organize a sort of a road mapping session soon, hopefully this fall, where we can bring all the key partners together, kind of lay out across the board for each of our sites, which of our sites are the best candidates for full-fledged redevelopment, which ones are best candidates for sort of modernization, upgrading what we have, as opposed to knocking it down and rebuilding. How do we factor in rehabilitation throughout this whole process? What's the best best estimate on costs? What's the best estimate on timelines? Just sort of kind of come up with a general roadmap for this whole effort, so that we can tell the community with some assurance what's going to happen when and how much it's going to cost. Obviously, these will all be guesses, but we want to at least have some educated guesswork completed. So, with that, I will be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Sure. I have a question. Thank you so much for the update, and happy to have you on board leading the way. One question in regards to timelines. I know that's kind of a long-standing thing, but just for the public and colleagues and whatnot, kind of do we have any idea in terms of timelines when we think Riverbend may be breaking ground, possibly when we will be able to relocate the residents from Crescent Halls and so forth?
Great question. So assuming we have to submit the low-income housing tax credit application in March. That decision will be made in, I believe, May or June. So we'll know by early summer whether or not we got the tax credits. Again, the tax credits would cover about 75–80% of the cost of those projects. Assuming we do we're going to be optimistic and assume we do get approved for tax credits, there's then some kind of pre-construction work that has to go on. Riverbend thinks that will take approximately 6 months. So we met with them today, and they said they're optimistic that assuming everything goes well, they'd be able to break ground either in the fourth quarter of 2019, so towards the end of 2019, or potentially the first quarter of 2020. And then it would just depend on sort of construction schedule from there, which we estimate would be about a year. So
we're looking at potentially having something maybe the summer of 2020?
I would say late 2020, in terms of like move-in date.
Move-in date,
That's
like 2020.
Best case scenario.
And then from just backing up, and I'm optimistic as well, we'll get the tax credits, but in the event that we won't, I would love for us to have some kind of dollar amount just so that we can, or so that I can have those conversations with council for safety net of sorts of what we need to put away.
Absolutely. We are crunching. We have some preliminary numbers already, but we're fine-tuning them as we proceed. And we met with one of your fellow counselors recently asked the same exact question. You know, we need numbers,
Yeah.
and so we're very much aware of that. So.
Great.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Dave and I have had the discussion, but Dr. Bellamy, we'd absolutely look to you and council's support for, critical to this is plan review and certain approvals on the city side,
Right.
to make sure that we expedite process, and to the extent that that's possible.
Well, rest
certainly look
assured,
for
I'm
your
going to
help.
do everything, literally everything within my power to not only expedite, but make sure council provides their full support, both financial and procedural, to ensure that this happens.
Great.
So
Thank you.
we just all have to work together.
Yeah, fantastic.
I have some questions.
Sure.
And this is for my understanding.
Mhm.
So on attachment D, number 2, bullet 1, you all have that, excuse me, that within the 6 to 12 month period before relocation is expected to occur, agency staff, full-time relocation coordinator working in collaboration with the team of local social services professionals shall meet with each affected household to conduct an assessment of the resident's current housing situation and desired housing goals. I guess my question would be, who's going to identify who that social services person, professional would be?
So our vision is that we would have on staff a full-time relocation coordinator who would sort of play the lead role in mapping out that whole relocation process and housing planning process for each household. And for instance, for some of the households who that might be include seniors, we'd probably have somebody, you know, on that team, maybe from JABA or an organization that works with seniors that knows about resources available to seniors. It's all going to be individually tailored to the needs of each household. If the household has children, we'll definitely want to have somebody from the schools on that team. So, and there's thankfully, we have a lot of resources in the social services arena locally that we can draw on. And that's another area in which we'll be looking for city support, is having, you know, the city, DSS, and other city agencies also involved, to where we can provide the support that each resident needs.
I was going to say that. Thank you, Ms. Talbert. I think just
go ahead.
We're clearly jumping into a discussion of relocation
Right.
principles.
Okay.
So before we jump into that discussion, are there any other questions on the other pieces of update Dave gave?
It was an excellent summation. Glad to have you on board. I have 2 things. Just a little bit of committee business. I think we talked last week about getting a matrix of kind of the parallel track for each site. That was in process.
That was that's that road mapping exercise that I was talking
I
about.
know it was in process, but we
Right.
were going to get it.
Oh, the actual chart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
I
was-
have. Ms. Kelly sent that to me, and I can forward. It's just an empty chart at this point. But yeah.
Oh, really? It had
Yeah.
to populate? Yeah,
Well,
that's okay.
Yeah. The idea was with that road mapping exercise, we'd fill in all the blanks in that chart. So,
Okay, I was
yeah.
expecting to see
Yeah.
something in progress.
Okay.
And then second, relative to the Avon Levy site, I know there were concerns about our obligations to the city. I would suggest we craft a letter to the city outlining our predicament and asking for an extension of that.
So there's financial
Right.
constraints on the Walker Garage property that we probably need to explore to ensure that we are able to continue doing the work we need to do on the site. So
Absolutely.
thank you. Are there other questions for Dave before we talk about relocation? Great. Will you please stay?
Sure.
Thank you. Would you like to give a brief overview of the relocation principles as you were primary author? I mean, I know you gather a lot of input, but
Yes. So.
you all right?
No, I'm
Sorry, your heart's both going nuts.
I'm sorry, it just started going crazy. I'm sorry.
So FAR had identified the need to come up with some principles to guide relocation, not for any one site, but just relocation across the board. You know, what are the sort of what's the framework we're going to use when we think about relocation for all of our sites? And so this originated with FAR, and basically there are 4 key points here. One is that they want the housing authority to be transparent, inclusive, and proactive in communicating with residents about the timetable and the process for redevelopment and for relocation. No residents should be blindsided by what's about to happen to their neighborhood and their own housing situation. 2, the housing authority would engage with the residents of each household to develop an individually tailored relocation and housing stability plan. Again, that's unique to the needs of each household. That would identify both short-term and long-term housing outcomes for all of our residents and spell out the steps needed to accomplish those outcomes. 3, the Housing Authority provides substantial wraparound services and support to each household in carrying out its own relocation and housing stability plan. We were at a meeting today at Crescent Halls where somebody asked a very sort of practical question, which is, who's going to help me pack up all my stuff? That's a very real world sort of concern and consideration. So this set of principles says very clearly the housing authority is going to make sure that there's support provided to every household in packing up all their stuff and moving and all the other things that go into relocation and covering the cost of all those. And then 4th, as specified in the Residents' Bill of Rights for Redevelopment, any temporary relocation would be minimal in impact and duration. We don't want people who are displaced from their housing to have to sort of be in a temporary housing situation for years at a time. We want to make this quick. We want to make this as painless as possible. Ultimately, we say in here that a relocation by its very nature can be very disruptive. But our goal really should be, not only do we minimize disruption and absolutely guarantee that nobody becomes homeless in the process of relocation, but actually we use this as an opportunity to create a better long-term housing outcome for all of our residents, right? And so by working with each household that's affected by relocation and come up with what's the best case scenario for you. And for some, and for many, it might be we want to stay in public housing and we're going to make that happen. For some, they might say, you know what, I would rather have a voucher to be able to go out on the market and rent a place on my own. Some might say, you know what, I really just want to go home and live with my family. Whatever that goal is that they have, we want to try to help them to accomplish it. And obviously, well, anyway. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Are there questions from the board?
There are
Comments?
questions from the board. I have another question. Under 3, bullet 2, it's talking about the addition. In addition, CRHA will assist each resident and secure other services as supports necessary to accomplish their housing goals. These may include, but are not limited to, and then it has a listing underneath it. Is that going to be optional, or is that something that every resident will be required to do?
No, it would not be required. It would certainly be made available to them. The goal is to maximize the amount and the breadth of resources available to residents. What we've seen in other communities, so this talks about a particular model called a Financial Opportunity Center. What we've seen, I was out in San Diego a couple years ago. Their housing authority has an in-house financial opportunity center. The moment you sign a lease to get into public housing in San Diego, you are automatically enrolled in this financial opportunity center. It's not mandatory, to answer your question, but it's made available to you free of charge, and it's very helpful, the kinds of support that they provide in helping people come up with a household budget, helping people develop a savings, open a savings account, help people get a better job, help people, maybe they want to learn how to start their own business. Whatever that financial opportunity is that works best for them, they provide one-on-one coaching to help you do that. Again, not mandatory, but it's optional. And what they said was that so many residents took full advantage of this because it really makes it as easy as possible for people to get the help they need to climb the economic ladder. So it works. It's a proven model, and whether or not we go with that exact model here is to be determined, but that's one that we know.
Yeah, so that was my next question. Would that be structured like our self-sufficiency program?
The difference is our self-sufficiency program, really there's relatively few residents that are enrolled in it, that participate in it. This would be open to all residents, all households, 100%.
Okay. And
assuming we can get the funding for it and all that good stuff.
And for number 2, bullet 5, it says staff will also ensure that the housing options presented to residents are comparable or superior in quality, size, price, location, and etc. I just wanted to know what you thought about adding disability in there, because we don't have anything that's addressing disability.
I consider that a friendly amendment, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was friendly, Wes.
Okay, well, you'll find some correct wording for that.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent
I
suggestion.
just
Or
want us to be
necessary
able to.
accommodations,
Yeah.
maybe?
Yeah.
Or something. I've read all of this and nothing is addressing a disability.
So we could say comparable, superior in quality, size, price, location, special accommodation, or
Not even special, but yeah, necessary accommodations.
necessary accommodation. Okay, great. We can definitely do that.
Are there other questions? I have a few thoughts and comments, but.
Oh, I had one more, Julie, before you
Okay.
move on.
Yes,
1,
ma'am.
2, 3, 4. In the fourth bullet under 3, it says, children of displaced families shall be allowed to attend school in their current school districts if they so choose and be provided transportation to those schools. We kind of left that open. Who's going to be responsible for providing that transportation?
The school system would be required to provide that transportation. They do that now. If you're a family experiencing homelessness, for instance, the school system is required to do their very best to keep a child in the same home school, even if the child's family is bouncing around from couch surfing here to living in a shelter here to living with relatives here. The school system already does that for families that are in tenuous housing circumstances. So we would be looking for them to apply the same model for
Thank you. It was
families
just
with
kind of
education.
open. I'm like, wait a minute, we're going to be responsible for that? Who's
No,
responsible
no.
for that? Okay.
So I want to
great question.
thank everyone for their work on this, and it truly reflects the values, I think, of this board and of this agency. I'm having a little heartache because while it fully reflects our values and who we want to be, it is not who we are right now. We are not a social services department. We can't even keep the FSS program operational right now. And so there is an amazing vision here that I wholly subscribe to, but I am concerned about laying out some principles that we cannot meet. Like at this time, we are not able to provide substantial wraparound services. We are certainly able to, and our best of our ability, bring together the resources that exist in the city in hopes that our residents can take advantage of them. We're doing that through the clinic, we're doing that in other ways. It's definitely where we need to get, but we're never gonna hire enough staff to be able to fully provide all of that ourselves. I just don't wanna, we have to be very careful what we promise, because most important is that residents trust us. And if we promise to deliver things we absolutely can't, then residents aren't going to trust us. And so I would welcome some input and thought from the community and from the board about how we meet these aspirational goals, and what things in here are totally solid, and what things in here do we need to reword a little bit so that we're not making promises we can't keep at this time.
Can I offer maybe a wording suggestion that might address some of that? Because it does say in here that in addition to the sort of core relocation services of housing counseling and those kinds of things, that it says, in addition, CRHA will assist each resident in securing other services and supports necessary to accomplish their housing goals, which sort of acknowledges your point, which is CRHA can't do it all.
Right, I
But
mean,
the-
number 3 in bold, we will
So
provide substantial.
So that's where I was going with this,
Yeah.
was maybe CRHA will provide or secure or help secure, mirroring the language in bullet number 2.
Yeah, I would be more comfortable with that for sure.
We'll
And I-
facilitate or something.
Facilitate,
Yeah.
strive toward.
Well, Ms. Johnson is correct. Under relocation, there are some services we have to provide, right? So those are spelled out here, but I think there are, above and beyond the ones that we are obligated to provide, there are other services we want to help our residents to
Absolutely,
secure.
moving costs and moving support,
Right.
yes, and we want to be beyond, and individual counseling, I think we do everything we can to get the funding to have a plan for each person. But when we're talking about, I mean, I'm envisioning the kinds of wraparound supports that are the above and beyond, and worried that we just don't, I just don't want to convey the wrong message.
So if we say provide or secure or help secure,
work towards securing, work towards coordinating maybe that's it, coordinating substantial wraparound services when we talk about DSS and we talk about, and then I think a piece that got left out that we had discussed in one of our meetings was going to some sort of commitment on our part as an agency not to lose track of anybody.
We did add that.
Oh, did I miss it? I
yes.
apologize.
No,
it's hiding in a bullet point.
It's under
somewhere.
bullet 3 under section 3.
Thank you.
Furthermore, follow-up support shall be provided once residents are moved into their new homes to ensure that they are faring well in their new environment.
We might make that its own bullet point.
We can certainly do that, absolutely.
Because that's really important to me, because it's certainly a legacy of failed relocation programs in other cities, is that people did become homeless or they just totally lost track of them once they got their vouchers, and we've been really committed from the beginning to making sure that doesn't happen.
Okay, great.
So, thank you.
We can definitely do that.
Thank you. Other thoughts from commissioners?
I will say, I don't want to brag too much on our housing authority and our partners in FAR, but I believe if this set of principles is adopted tonight, my guess is this may well be the most sort of forward-looking and comprehensive set of relocation principles of any housing authority in the country. I mean, it's that inclusive and I think
but
protective.
they're as inclusive and wonderful as it is, and we want to be that. We want to be that forward-looking wave. However, we really only have 15 people on staff. We're in an agency where we are struggling to keep the doors open and barely in the black. And I appreciate the support of the city, but it isn't there yet. I mean, there's a lot of verbal support.
Right.
But actually living this vision, we're not there yet. Right. And so I want this to be true. I will work to make it true. I think this board is committed to working to make it true, but I also want to be really careful. And I don't know, maybe that's just me.
I don't think this is strictly just a matter of, writing a check or getting, hiring staff. I think, moving, imagine how, you have moved in your life. This is when, on moving day, I bring my 2 pickups, and, if there's the van left early and left somebody standing on the side of the curb, I think all of us, all the staff, all this board, will need to write, and all of our residents. You get your stuff moved and you don't go inside and turn on the TV, you come back and help. I mean, I think we as a community will live by the things that are on paper.
I think he addressed a lot of what your concern would be when he said that looking for a relocation coordinator that will be working in collaboration with a team of local social services professionals, address the wraparound services portion that you're concerned about. Because if we have social services involved, then they're going to identify some of the wraparound issues or concerns that you're concerned about manifesting during this transition. And so if we can pinpoint and identify who that person would be, and get that person very much involved, then that person can also work with the housing counseling assistance person that you want to put in place. So then you have a 3-man team right there dealing with your wraparound service issue.
Right, so we've just added at least 2 positions to our budget that are unfunded, which I appreciate. I've got my agency HUD, the auditors have been in this week. I just, have to.
The thing is, we also can request funding.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Not only request funding, but he also talked about hiring Section 3. We have a lot of residents who are qualified that we have not identified to be able to come in and do the work inside the agency. We don't always have to look at hiring outside of the agency.
And I think some of the other things that we've discussed also is looking at some other areas who have had to do relocation to see what it looks like so that we can understand what it's going to look like and how we're going to deal with our residents.
And we have to keep in mind that our agency is not like other agencies. And when we're looking at those other agencies, we need to be taking from them things that could help us add to us. And not trying to do it like them, but taking from them what can help us benefit from those things and become ourselves and not become the other agencies.
And everything we're talking about relative to redevelopment is a very phased process. So we'll be biting off small increments of this, and we will be gaining that experience that we're, you know, on our first one, we'll look to other agencies, but we will have a lot of experience by the third time.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
because
if
we
you know,
also
this-
have to understand that, you know, we have to follow HUG regulations. They're tight regulations. So, yeah, we are going to be looking at other agencies. We're going to learn what their mistakes are so that we won't make those mistakes. We're going to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
So is there, what action would you all like to take now?
Well, do you feel like it needs to be wordsmith bullet by bullet to get to something that you're comfortable with, or?
I think the discussion we just had, as long as those changes are reflected, I'm comfortable.
Well, I would move approval of the CRHA principles for relocation as presented.
I'll second that.
As presented with the friendly amendments presented with friendly amendments. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, fantastic.
A lot of progress. Great job.
It is.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
Norris.
And next, Wes, we would love to talk about an upcoming work session with council.
Yes.
And I would welcome you and Grant maybe to walk us through a little bit about expectations for that meeting and what we need to do to be prepared.
Sure. I can if you want. I'm just.
You want to start?
Yeah, I'm just pulling up the, make sure I have the correct date.
So the date that's been proposed is November 7th.
Right.
They have not formally invited us in any way. I was just tagged along on an email chain and a guest at that date. I don't know a time. Do you?
Right. So we've been discussing this time in regards to November 7th. Is there a specific time that works better for us, for this board? We currently have on the council calendar, they have from 6 to 9 p.m. Now, I will admit in full transparency, I'm just going to be completely honest. I don't think that date is going to work. That's my wife's birthday.
Uh-oh.
And
Oh.
I don't think that I'll be able to be there, but I don't want one person to belabor the session.
I think as our
I think we
council
shouldn't even be
representative,
there.
it's kind of required.
Yeah. I know there's literally no way I'm already.
Yeah.
She's like.
Well, I'm supposed to be in New York, so.
Oh, okay. So that day doesn't work for you either.
Well, I haven't booked my tickets yet. I was going to try and rearrange my trip if I could, but
Could have cake and candles here.
yeah.
No, sirree.
All right. So.
If we did an earlier time so you could be home for dinner?
No. I think the day should be out.
Is there another date during that week that works for?
Well, that works for council?
We don't have anything else on our calendar that week.
I'm
other than
available.
the 5th. The 5th is
or
our
the
city
6th.
council meeting.
Oh, there is.
And the 6th, so the 6th was the original date that was proposed, and then, I mean, that's election day.
Yeah.
So we were. Does the 8th work for anyone?
If I do the 8th, it has to be the evening.
The 8th.
If I go to New York, I'll be gone the 7th to the 9th.
Oh, okay.
But I don't need to be there, actually. You all are much more important because.
What you mean?
Well, I mean, Mr. Osteen's really taking the lead on redevelopment. Betsy, I don't need to be there.
What about the 13th? Is anybody available for the 13th?
We have
I
planning.
won't be here.
We have planning commission.
Oh, okay.
And then I know you all are going. I mean, I can counter with the. You guys are going the 13th to the 16th, correct?
The 15th.
13th to the 15th.
Yeah, the 26th or the 27th.
So, I can propose the 8th. The evening of Thursday, the 8th.
Would your board be available during our next board meeting on the 9th, on the 26th? Because we're all.
We should.
The main point of business is for us to approve an annual plan.
Yeah. That folds pretty nicely with
So-
the redevelopment discussion.
With the board's permission, can I request to council that 2 days, either the 8th or the 26th?
Yeah.
The 26th is good for me.
I would hope so, because that's our normal meeting day.
Well, I thought we was gonna do, okay, well, and you were planning then. I was saying during the day, sir.
I mean, am I wrong? I know we do have a lot of other board business, so that was just a proposal. How do you all feel about having that be a joint session with council on our standing meeting date if they're available?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
They come to us instead of us going to them.
That's for the
Something
annual
like
So
plan.
let's not have the us and them, because we're all on the same
So,
team.
so is that day gonna be confirmed now, or is that gonna be to be determined?
It is to be determined because
You
we
have
have
to
to get
check with
input from
council.
all
We'll
of
know
city
by the end
council.
of the week. I'll make sure.
So
everyone
we're
knows.
doing, right now it's the 8th or the 26th?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I'm literally sending the email, like, literally right now.
Okay. Great. So now that scheduling details are taken care of.
Sorry.
No, I appreciate that.
So essentially, council wants to chat with the housing authority about a couple of different things. One, getting an update on redevelopment, relocation plans. We know that and I spoke briefly at the council meeting, the last 2 council meetings, about how we've entered into agreement with Riverbend. Things have been going very well from my perspective. Also, must give some kudos to Miss Rosia Parker, who's been at the council meetings, also filling in ways in which I can't in some regards and providing some updates. Right, Rosia? Oh, you? Thank you. So council again wants to hear about redevelopment, but then also as we talk about affordable housing. And this very real issue in regards to floating a bond from council's perspective to pay for some of the plans and the ideas that many of the members on this board and community members, FAR and Low Income Coalition, CLIC, and several others. I think it's a very, very real possibility. But I know my colleagues on council want to hear more details about what that looks like, and then a full-fledged conversation of sorts before kind of going that route. I can't give too many details, but I am going to say roughly I'm going to be presenting something to the public next week in regards to another dedicated funding stream to do this in affordable housing. So again, colleagues, they just want to know kind of that we have our stuff together before we commit to a significant amount of funding for the Housing Authority. And just to be clear, while we're there, and I know this is all public worker, I'll be speaking and requesting funding specifically for the Housing Authority. This isn't going to be for other entities or anything like that. I know that's to the chagrin of some, but kind of my priority is specifically the Housing Authority getting funding. And then also, in addition to the funding piece, how can we be the arm for not just redevelopment of public housing sites, but building? So some of the lots that we've seen in the community, opposed to us creating land banks or using other arms or entities, why can't we get the Housing Authority to partner with the city? If we see a lot, let's purchase a lot. Let's maybe build a duplex on it or build 2 units on it or something like that. And we build it up as we see done in other cities across the country. I don't think we need to have a whole other entity, because the Housing Authority's purpose was essentially to be the arm to build. So that's kind of where we are. That's how I'll be going at it in the meeting. I hope we'll all be on the same page and we're working at this together. And that's that. If there's any questions, concerns?
No, I think that's
Anything else y'all want to highlight during the meeting? Or?
Mr. Duffield, I know you and Grant also spoke with another counselor who had, some ideas about what would happen in the work session. Do you want to share your insights?
Yeah, from the meeting that Mr. Norris and I had with another council member, yeah, certainly want to understand where we are in the redevelopment process relative to our current initiatives. What I heard, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, was I heard a fair amount of concern about sort of the next phase of redevelopment, particularly as could pertain to West Haven, and concerns about the existing infrastructure there and what the plans of CRHA might look like around West Haven long term. And you know, to be honest, I mean, we shared that's really not been anything that we've looked at any depth recently, and it's really been outside the focus of the redevelopment committee. However, just you know, in transparency, that was some of the concern that was shared, and I think we ought to be in a position to at least acknowledge or speak to it.
All right. So more so from a modernization perspective, some of the units?
I think yeah, from and this is where we spoke more about, you have a redevelopment track, you have a modernization track, and then you have something that looks more like a rehab track, where it's not necessarily full modernization with an intent to retain the existing housing stock for 20 or 30 years, but it does mean some effort placed to make certain upgrades for the next 10-year sort of horizon.
I mean, because if we're being realistic, just even according to Mr. Norris, as he broke down, if we're even looking at breaking ground and kind of moving forward with the whole Crescent Halls and all that stuff, First Street stuff, if that's not until we think of late 2019, fourth quarter 2019, early 2020, then if we're talking about our other sites, that's definitely like a 5-year window of sorts.
Certainly.
Which, if that is indeed the case, and we know that we don't have the capacity to redevelop everything at the same time, there has to be some kind of rehabilitation for the other sites. So I do think as well, I mean, while the redevelopment committee is meeting between now and then, for whenever our meeting is, if we could look at, all right, we're looking to maybe create another RFP to meet with other developers about how we actually do rehabilitation for West Haven, First Street, 6th Street, so forth. Which units we want to identify, how do we make it nicer and whatnot. I think that would also make council feel really good. I mean, I'm not going to say that. We're going to fight to get the funding regardless, but I think that would also it would look good for us to have kind of those ideas. We don't have to have all the plans down pat, but let's just say at least that but let's show that we've been talking about it and we're prepared to move forward in some capacity.
And in all fairness, if we look at and continue to look at tax credits, the tax credits we talked about earlier, the 9% competitive tax credit, you look at a 4% tax credit, that's a non-competitive process. It's not as much money, but it is more geared towards rehabilitation work. And with a 15-year hold period, that folds pretty nicely with the long-term redevelopment kind of plan in some areas, right?
Yeah. I think targeted goals would also bode well for us. Yep. So if we're like, this is a 5 to 7 year kind of idea.
Yep.
This is where we're looking at in regards to this site, then that site. I mean, us just showing that we're looking at some kind of planning process and we can show council tangibly, this is where the money will go. That's gonna, or at least we've done the preliminary work to think about it. That's gonna bode well for us.
FAR is on all of that.
Ma'am?
We up on all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
FAR is up on all
okay.
of that. We're up on all of that. We know, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we got it.
All right.
Good.
So we know what we need to do for you all, the information that we need to pass on to you. But we're going to be looking and talking to some other folks about other sites,
Good.
people who have done it and know
What's what?
you know.
Right.
So in our conversation with council, can we make sure we add that there is a conversation with FAR, the residents, in reference to forecasting whatever it is that they need to see on paper?
Oh, it was under
I'm just saying.
my impression everybody would be there.
I'm sorry.
It was my understanding everyone would be
You
there.
just asked for bullets on paper, right?
Yeah, but I'm saying it was you said for a conversation with FAR, it was my understanding that
No,
everyone
not for
would
a
be there.
conversation. I was saying you want something on paper stating to show.
Oh, okay, I see.
To show council. We here?
Yeah, I got you.
To show
I got you.
council that we have been having a conversation, and I'm just saying in our forecasting, just allow them to know that we having conversation with the residents as well.
Because that's going to be, yeah. I thought you meant like make sure that FAR is at the meeting. I'm like, I thought FAR would already be at the meeting. All right.
I mean, there's,
Got you.
there's, stuff that we still need to find out and understand ourselves. So the more, when we get back, we'll have more information on it.
All right.
Great. Are there other comments, thoughts, questions about preparing for this conversation? I'm actually wondering, we just scheduled a work session on our annual plan, but we might carve out a half an hour of that just to kind of reconnect on this before the 26th, should that date work out.
Right.
Great. Thank you. If those dates play out as they line
I
up.
sent the email, so I mean, I'm sure
We'll see.
they'll probably get back to me
We'll
shortly, and I'm watching. So.
Yeah, just keep us posted. Thank you.
Will do.
Are you all doing all right? Do we need a break or can we keep going?
And we can just go. if
All
nobody
right.
needs it,
So next on our agenda is a security planning update. Mr. Duffield?
Yeah, in your binder behind the sleeve in the front is a document that's entitled Supplemental Security Services at CRHA Sites. As the commission will remember, at our last commission meeting, we had discussion about what's an appropriate response to safety concerns recently experienced at CRHA sites. At that time, there was discussion about deploying Millennium Security to provide additional services. Coming out of the commission meeting, we entered into a number of conversations with the community and with the police department itself. And quite frankly, there was some hesitance, some concern about the best approach by which additional security services could be implemented within CRHA communities. Had some discussions with Charlottesville Police Department and are working somewhat with them to review varmint policies, things that involve our parking policy. As a parallel track, Millennium came back to CRHA and presented what they would recommend as a possible step for additional security services. In all events, I wasn't comfortable shortly after the commission meeting engaging Millennium Security when additional conversations needed to take place and were taking place within the community. So to that end, kind of bringing this discussion back to the board and asking for some guidance as to what the board's sense is about additional security, just given where we are today. The information that Millennium has provided envisions providing 2 security officers who would rotate between West Haven, South First Street, and 6th Street. They're proposing Thursday through Sunday in the evening hours, nighttime hours. One of the key points in the proposal is that security staff are not intended to take the place of or function in the same manner as local law enforcement. They're intended to create additional safety presence within the community, and be more response-oriented. It's not what I would consider an invasive or investigative type of service. It's more of a community resource. Hey, if you need some additional security in or around your home, give us a call. Or if there's something that's clearly developing that doesn't look like it's healthy for residents, then the security service would be charged with making that phone call to the police or to the property manager to help address. I think that's, in a nutshell, what we're looking at. I'll certainly turn it back to the board to get feedback and thoughts.
I have a question.
Yes.
Nothing is addressing emergency situations for parking violations, such as grievance. Family members may have death in the family, so they tend to come over and not spend a long time, but sometimes you have some family members that are in and out, and it's not addressing what to do or how they're going to address that situation. If they're going to extend courtesy to give out temporary parking passes for that time or that space in the moment, or if they're going to have people towed off for violating. I just think something needs to be addressed as far as that's concerned, because, you know, we do have some residents who have death in the family.
Sure.
And I know sometimes, like on First Street, they'll come and park at the yellow line. Sometimes in, what is it, on in Hardy Drive, sometimes they'll double park and they'll block people in. And so I'm looking for something that addresses through services that type of situation where that situation won't become hostile.
Sure. No, that's a good
or
point.
offensive.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely.
I think that's a question they're proposing to help enforce the parking policy when they're on site. Is that a role we want them to play? I mean, when there's a bereavement or a loss in the family, I mean, that's part of our parking policy. That's spelled out pretty clearly, that if you know, you talk to your property manager, right? We can't ask them to be property managers, but you call your property manager and you get parking passes, or you tell your property manager, and property manager lets security know, hey, you know, this unit experienced a death in the family, you might see some extra activity there tonight. Don't tow without knocking on the door. I mean, I think, is that the kind of thing they can do?
If my son dropped dead right now, the last thing I'm going to be worried about doing is notifying the property manager. My family is going to come to make sure that whatever the family needs at that point in time is going to be handled. So until such time as I can contact the property manager, how is that going to be enforced, handled, or spoken to?
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent point, and we just need to stress, and I think we tried to stress in the document itself is a heavy emphasis on being, again, not being necessarily an authoritarian type of service, but more of a, you know, I don't want to say concierge, but more of a community resource. Yeah, a community resource. And I think that's exactly the type of consideration that needs to be, you know, clearly discussed and instilled in any kind of arrangement.
And so,
but yeah.
in the event that happens, will we be looking for them to find, if it's community resources, will we be looking for them to find a point person in the situation to speak to and say, hey, you guys, we just want to give you a reminder that we know y'all grieving, but we need somebody to take care of getting in contact with the property manager in order to delegate the situation correctly. Because what has happened is, in the past, is people will be grieving and they have family members and they come out and their cars are towed. Nobody has had any type of communication. So not only am I dealing with death, I'm dealing with having to come up with the cost of towing. So
And maybe to the point that the officer carries, temporary,
I mean, even if it's just
Yeah.
a temporary 2-hour pass, that expires, just something for that time that they won't be told,
No, that's,
it doesn't have to be, something very serious, but it could be very serious.
sure.
Are there other pieces in here that you all have questions about, or is this idea of community resource officer versus sort of enforcement officer
So the
fit
thing-
with your vision?
The thing I'm somewhat concerned about is, so if you have a community resource officer, do they have, are they gonna be respected within the community? Yeah, and I think, as we're hearing in the fact, no, I mean, I know when I was growing up in public housing not too long ago, attempts at community resource officers, we would just call them rent-a-cops. And I'm not listening to you,
Well,
rent-a-cop.
I wasn't
You can't make
looking-
me do anything.
I wasn't looking to change the name. I was just trying to find a
Yeah, but
end to a means, a solution. I just know in the past there has been conversation from the residents and concern that at a time of grievance, this is something that's not taken into consideration. So
no, the parking policy, I agree. I understand wholeheartedly what you're saying.
She's asking.
What I'm thinking about is the security piece and keeping people safe. Really, I'm just really confused. I'm kind of at a loss because it's we hear from some people that, we hear directly, y'all need to do something. We need to feel safe on site. And then we can hear from some other people and oh no, it's not that bad. But then we don't do anything, and it's leaving those who are feeling vulnerable, they're still feeling unafraid. Or excuse me, they're still feeling afraid. And then it's we do nothing because we heard from some people that this isn't what we want.
Well, I totally agree that safety is first. But I also wanted to address within our safety situation, because we're talking about towing and we're talking about notifying the tow agency when people are violating the parking policy. I wanted to address the fact that sometimes this has been a very difficult situation for some residents, and if we could come up with something constructive that's conducive for everybody, or if we can agree to disagree on something that makes sense for the person that would be grieving, instead of having to come back to the board and have residents come to the meeting and express, how that affected them in their time of grieving.
Well, we are talking about, when we're talking about, we're not, I guess, community resource officer, I think had more to do with the sort of attitude that we hope security officers take in being there as a resource and support for residents, as opposed to being law enforcement agents. But they still have responsibility to be out on site, on foot, patrolling, noticing things. If something's getting out of hand, they're immediately there to bring in help.
That's the part, though. So if they notice something,
Right.
they're immediately there to do what?
Call
Say,
the
hey, you
cops.
stop.
To pick up the phone and call CPD and say,
Right.
look, we got a situation, because.
That's how they do it at Crescent Halls.
Yeah.
I beg to differ.
And I think, I feel like Millennium has been at Crescent Halls for quite a while. They know things, they see things, and they have meetings with us. They address issues that they see. We know that they are things that are going on there. I feel like they're very professional people. When we've talked to them in the past and we've told them that we've had problems with certain people that they're bringing on the property, they either fire them or move them. We no longer see them. I feel like, I have concerns about what they're going to be dealing with, because I know what some of the younger police officers deal with. But I know when the older ones come there, you don't hear the trash talk to them as they do the younger ones. So You're gonna get some of that. But the thing is that the residents are begging for help. And we have got to help the residents who need help. The ones who are complaining, who are saying, we don't want them there, it's okay, they're lying.
Yeah.
Okay?
So
They're lying, and we know for a fact they're lying.
will the two of you walk me through an emergency situation, or they come upon something that isn't right? What do they do in Crescent Halls, and what have you witnessed that isn't in this that you think we need?
First of all, there's no communication at Crescent Halls. Security doesn't know whether they're supposed to call to have an automobile towed. They have not been informed of, you know what I'm saying, the proper procedures. So there is a discrepancy of how they should handle that.
Same thing with
You know
the
what I'm
city
saying?
police.
Exactly.
The same thing with the city police.
So it's you know what I'm saying, I kind of think that maybe holding a conversation along with millennium, okay, you know what I'm saying.
That group.
Just call us.
Yeah, we got you.
Right. I think that holding a conversation with them and letting them know that, because residents are complaining, they have nowhere to park. We have to drive around our whole parking lot just to find a parking space for us, because you have people either going to the beer plant, you know what I'm saying, or, you know, cars, residents not letting their visitors use their visitors' passes. So they don't know, you know what I'm saying. But then there needs to be some kind of communication along with housing as to, you know what I'm saying, the correct procedures as well.
Okay.
So walk me through an emergency situation, what's not in here that needs to be. What do they do now at Crescent Halls?
Okay, for instance, there was an incident last week where a young man was caught breaking into cars in Crescent Hall's parking lot. The correct procedure for me, or I would think, or anybody else would think, would be to, if, you know, I'm security, to call the police, or if I'm afraid, or, you know what I'm saying, whatever. This security guard stood in the middle of the thing and like, what do you want me to do? So me being a resident and, you know, of who I am too, I go out there with him, but he's more afraid than I am.
Okay.
So it's
But I would hate for that
it's
security guard to be the representation for all of them. Like,
Well,
I hear
exactly,
what you're saying wholeheartedly.
exactly.
But if we let that instance be like the representation for all of millennium, I don't think that would be
But
fair.
I think that's.
I'm not trying to discredit or dispute what you're saying at all. I'm just saying, like, he's on one.
We have some audience members who'd like to give us some input, but I'm curious, Wes, you were like, an emergency situation, they can't just be on their phone. So what
for
happens?
example, they see two residents, or a resident selling drugs to another resident. Will they be able to detain this individual, or will they say, "Hey, you stop selling whatever you're doing," and then they call the police?
Yeah.
And is that individual who is selling something, are they going to run?
Of course.
I think that's a
Can't
question that
dispute.
you need to ask them, because in the past, they've brought us pictures, they've showed us stuff that they have confiscated, but how they do that, I think that's a question for
Are they kinda
Millennium,
like-
and you need to.
Right.
we
Or
need
the
to-
human cameras, so
yeah.
they can go to the police and say, I witnessed this, here was the gentleman, here's what he looked like, here was the woman, here's
Or,
what she was
or
wearing.
another realistic one, they see someone with a gun.
Yeah.
They see someone with a gun and they say, okay, like, what do they do?
Well,
Like, are you gonna can millennials say to the person? I know some of the officers are bond, or some of their security guards are bonded, and they have license in which they can detain them and take them to jail and whatnot. Are those the ones that we're going to have, or are we going to have the ones that aren't bonded? Because if they see someone with the gun and they say, "Hey, you stop," and you wait right there while I call the police, that person's going to be gone.
yeah, because first of all, that person could have a license to carry a gun.
That's true.
And if they have a license to carry a gun, there's nothing that they can do, even if they stop. And if he's got a license to carry a gun, he can go on in.
Well, Virginia's an open carry state anyway, so everybody can.
That's the way it is.
But it is the case, I mean,
What if
can
they see
be
someone
there-
shooting in the air?
Can they be
Well,
there
that's a different
recording
story.
that,
Mm-hmm.
putting it in the log, and helping us make a barment case, right? So that, is that?
Yeah.
But there are a couple folks who definitely want to say something on this, so I'll definitely allow, with the commission's permissions, opportunity for some comment? All the Miss Johnsons.
Hi, Joy Johnson, 8028 Harder Drive. It's just kind of, I'm wondering why do we even have a safety committee that is meeting? Because it's exactly what you all are sitting up here debating is the things that people are putting together. It just need to move to a faster track. That's number one. Number two, I thought that the police department, since we were working with the police department, they were waiting to get Millennium's plan so that they can sit down and do whatever. Where is that? I know, we had that meeting and there were some things. Why are you looking like that, Miss?
No, I'm agreeing with you.
Okay.
Yeah, yes.
All right.
I'm agreeing, yes.
And there were some things that you all were supposed to send to them, and then they were gonna have their legal people look at it, and then I thought there maybe another meeting, and maybe you need to make sure it's happening, another meeting, but also then to have Millennium so that they can understand, because the chief is asking for a plan for Millennium. So I'm just wondering, is any of that happening or what?
What I heard the chief say is, if we do higher security, which she seemed to, she said, should the housing authority take the step to bring in supplemental security services, she would advise that we share that information with them and the plan.
Right.
But Millennium doesn't have any responsibility to CPD. We do, which is part of why we're talking about it. And you're right. I mean, we're trying to get in all the comments from the safety committee too, but also wanting the board to have input.
Okay, so I'm just trying to figure out, right, because it seemed like there's movement and then there's movement and now this is here. I'm glad to see this because I have some comments on it. But I was just trying to get all the pieces because, we have one meeting, the safety committee is meeting, we're trying to bring it up. I just want it to be, where are we on this? I understand that you have something now, but I'm pretty sure the safety committee has been working and they have some things to come back, but we have a separate meeting that we are doing to build a relationship between CRHA and CPD and to work with Millennium because, and what I have expressed, and I will express this again, I'm a consensus person. I know, I've been on boards and know when y'all vote on things, we have to bless it. The only concern that I have with this is that all three entities need to understand each other's responsibility. The police department needs to understand it, Millennium needs to understand it, and the residents need to understand it. So I just want to make sure that we are merging in that direction, because right now, sitting back there, I don't see that merge. I'm glad you all are having, thank you for bringing this so we can have something, and I'm glad you're having that conversation. But I wanted to merge because, Charlottesville Finest and CRHA cannot be the only two that understand and know. It has to be all four entities now because now you have CRHA, Millennium, Charlottesville Finest, and the residents. And I have to say, I don't care who hate me, I don't care who do what. The residents hold some responsibility in this. But we have to understand what it is that is expected when we see A, B. We already know what to expect when we see A, really, which is the housing authority, but it's B and C. So I just want some clarity. And then one thing I just saw in here, and then I'll leave. You all have on here, I scan things. I have to read it when I get home, but I just scanned a little bit. And on page 2, where you say, make every effort to ensure privacy and peaceful enjoyment of the residents and community, staff will patrol all common areas, parking lots, playground, dumpsters, areas, etc. And we walk the perimeter of the property. Security staff may patrol behind the units only when such activity is deemed. It should be at all times, not when activity is deemed.
Thank you. And I know, Wanda, do you want to share your thoughts? And Ms. Bell, if you have some things to say.
So my name is Wanda Johnson. Good evening to everyone. I just want to caution the board against implementing, using Millennium to enforce the lease where that's something that's not being done. So where we talk about the towing and parking policy, don't have Millennium be first on the scene to start doing this. There needs to be a concerted effort from the Housing Authority with regards to all of these policies. And before, I think we have Millennium step on the scene and start enforcing them.
Thank
so I just
you.
want to make
Yeah,
that
that's appreciated.
clear.
Yeah, Ms. Bell.
Mr. Grant, could you forward that to Ms. Charlene Green for our safety meeting?
I certainly
And when is the next safety meeting?
We're waiting for this information to come back. That's what's the only thing.
Okay.
Okay.
So once we get that information, we can go ahead and start another meeting. And it would be nice if we could get all the board there to keep everybody on task of what's going on.
Yes. And
So we won't have these discussions, everybody's all over the place with it.
I appreciate you and Ms. Johnson's comments that this seems like, wait, what effort is this? How does it fit in with everything else? And this really is an opportunity for the board to give some of their thoughts, but certainly isn't conclusive. It's just part of helping to define the role of what security might play so that we can be sure that it lines up and we can communicate clearly with CPD and with housing and with residents about respective roles. And so that was something that it came out of the safety committee and out of the meeting with the police. And so this, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't ground this conversation in that. So thank you for bringing that grounding to this conversation. I don't think there's any action we take tonight because there's lots of input that's being gathered. This was an opportunity to gather board's input. Along those lines, if you have any other input, now would be the time to share it. And if there's any sort of other advice or directive you would give to Mr. Duffield as he pursues safety issues.
Do we need assistance with setting up a meeting with CPD, Mr. Duffield, or a board representative?
Certainly
and the
wouldn't.
safety committee?
Certainly, it wouldn't hurt, yeah. And sooner rather than later.
So who do we want at that meeting? Because I can text you.
Can we brainstorm about that in the morning, maybe? Or do you want to do it right now?
He said sooner rather than later.
Okay. So do you want to give a summary of the meeting we did have and the outcomes that we were pursuing with Chief Brackney?
Can? Yeah.
Because I think it's just sort of a follow-on to that meeting and to the safety meeting.
Give me just a minute. Let me see if I can pull up this, these notes. Yeah, we had the meeting with CPD. I think it was on October 2nd. Immediately prior, we had a meeting with, here we go, the Safety Committee on October 1st. A number of topics discussed. The question comes back as Chief Brackney put forward. What is an acceptable plan to address violence in a community? To that end, she asked for copies of the barment policy, the parking policies, a copy of the lease. She did express a desire that CRHA provide and Millennium provide a security plan to the police in advance of any private security firms coming on station. I asked for a copy of what those look like, and said, well, that we really don't have any for anywhere else, you know, it would, so, yeah, it's a bit of a challenge to understand kind of what the
She requested of us, not having been here and also understanding that times have changed, that we review together the policies that we do have so that she can make sure her officers and that our MOU with them is up to date. And we asked in return that she find someone on her staff who is our primary liaison and contact person who will work through us both in review of those policies, but also should we pursue a contract with Millennium, that they be the one that, you know, helps communicate those roles, and most importantly, that they represent the police at our security meetings, at our resident services meetings, at this meeting when needed. And we're waiting to hear back from her. She was kind of trying to figure out who that right person might be. So I think the question to Chief Brackney is who's that person, because they should be at this next meeting. If this next meeting is really about barment policy and some other policies that they wanted to take a look at, then we need to get city legal there. If this policy is really just about defining rules for on-the-ground security and emergency services, then it really is about figuring out who from her department should be involved in those conversations besides herself, so that we can develop those relationships.
So do we have a MOU currently with us and the city? I mean, with us and CPD?
There was an MOU, I believe, years ago.
Right. But do we currently have?
I don't know that one has been.
So that's probably our first step.
So then we need to get those sort of legal pieces on, because they want to review barment before they sign an MOU with us to enforce barment.
But I don't get why that conversation can't happen simultaneously.
Oh,
like we bring our barment as well as an MOU for their review, or we even send it over in advance of the meeting, and then we get that signed.
Well, and all of this, I mean, all this is important, right? All of this needs to be done. At the end of the day, Wes, you get the calls, I get the calls from, you know, people, residents who say, I'm scared to have my kids outside my unit, understandably. And that doesn't feel acceptable to me. The police department says we have 8 officers on staff at any shift to cover the entire city. They're stretched too thin. Gosh, I'm scared for the safety of our communities. And I don't know, is there any kind of interim partial step that we should take or could take, and not, you know, wake up a week from now to something really terrible having happened? That,
I mean, is there a trial that we could run based on much of what's in here, with the opportunity to revisit in the very near future, based on resident feedback? And then there was a safety meeting that undid that, so.
Well, they have more than 8 when they come in our community. That's true. They come in there about a dozen.
It's 22 per 12 hours. 22 police on 12 hours.
Yeah, they have more than 8.
Well, maybe it's 8 community resource officers, or not resource officers, 8 of their trained community.
They do it by like geo zones or whatever. So
yeah.
8 of them for the zones.
I will say that Chief Brackney was, you know, I think she really shares our values and our ideas about empowering our communities and not just being straight law enforcement. That's the wrong word, but I think we all have a lot of steps to get there.
Well, I think we need to give her what she asked for. She asked for the
We did.
Okay, so
we're waiting for her to give us somebody on her staff.
Okay.
And to follow.
So does she have what Millennium sent to? Does she have this?
Not yet.
No, not yet.
Well, then maybe this needs to go to her
Maybe
too.
we'll send that next.
Yep.
So, okay, I don't want to,
Grant, I really appreciate you bringing
Okay.
this to us. Did you get the feedback that you want for now?
Yep.
Do you feel happy pursuing a continued conversation with both Millennium and CPD about interim security services that we provide?
Sure.
Okay, is that
I'd
where
like
we
to
are as
ask
a
the
board?
board's permission to attend the next safety committee meeting and work with the safety committee to create a MOU between the housing authority and the police department.
So moved.
Is that the safety committee's role?
He's saying he wants to come and help them. He wants to go to the next meeting.
I just want
I
the
just
board.
didn't know if they were creating the MOU.
Have we tapped?
But certainly you should come to the meeting. Okay, you don't need our committee. That sounds good. Thank you. If you don't mind, we're gonna take a 5-minute break.
Why don't you, can we let Ms. Johnson do the resident service thing before she leaves?
Would you like
She
to?
should, and you need to start moving her up on the list.
Well, then I'm just gonna take a little personal break. But you give your report. I'll be right back.
I'm ready to get out of here. It's cold up in here.
You alright?
Yeah, I just gotta go to work. Hi, my name is Joy Johnson, and I'm the co-chair of the resident services meeting. At the resident service meeting, we announced about the new housing service, the new housing manager that will start on November the 1st. And I'm sorry. We talked a little bit about the strengthening system grants. So we basically gave an update about the meeting with Chief Brackney, and that we was waiting on the housing authority to forward whatever the ask was, and then after that, we would push Wes to kind of make sure the next meeting happened quickly, because we know that safety is a big concern, and hopefully after doing that we would probably have another meeting with Millennium. You're not the only one having problems saying it. Millennium also, so that something can be in place by the spirit season.
I was not gonna laugh.
Okay, so we were hoping that we could get that done quickly. So yeah, I think it all depends on how quickly we can get a meeting with Chief Brackney, and then after that, setting another meeting with Millenniums, and hopefully that new MOU between the Housing Authority and CPD will be done. There were some things that, so there was another follow-up meeting at the safety committee meeting, but a lot of people didn't make it because it just wasn't on their calendar. So I can't report out on what happened. And Miss Sonia, were you there at the second meeting? No, and she's not here. Miss Green recalled that there was a barman policy that was created when Longo was here, but doesn't really know what has happened when Thomas came, and whether or not, this current chief has that, and that's what was sent to them. So it was mostly about safety, but also some things came up about Crescent Halls and with people using that parking lot. How people are parking there and how it's not safe. And then Miss Wicks was there, and she brought our work plan, and what we're gonna be working on, hopefully by the end of the month, by the first of the year, we will have a work plan for the whole year. So both the board and everybody will know exactly what's going to be done, and who is gonna be there and who the speaker is, and also, so at least you will have, a calendar, for the whole year, of the resident services, what gonna be discussed. I think that was it. I need to stop saying, here we go again. We also realized that we have some, international rescue residents in our community who, other than, they're not feeling safe on a different level. And we have to figure out how we, help those clients, and plus, information that's going out is only going out in English. And so we need to try to figure out how we start making sure, figuring out how many nationalities is in our community, and trying to figure out a way how we get those information out. Our next, okay, so going forward, hold a second meeting with Chief Brackney and Mr. Duffield. Ms. Green will report back from the Safety Subcommittee, resume newsletter. They would ask that you resume a newsletter to put things in, and then we're gonna create a 6-month calendar for topics upcoming. And we need to know who is the person from CPD who is going to be sitting on our, committee. And that they're saying that the notices for the resident services meeting is not being posted on the website.
Okay.
And so people would like to have that posted on the website. Ms. Parker was the winner for the $10 raffle. And the meeting was adjourned at 2:30, and our next meeting at 6th Street will be November the 8th at 1. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so you're gonna make sure we get that meeting right?
Working on it right now.
Okay. Thanks again to Ms. Johnson and all the residents who were at that meeting. So next on our agenda is discussing the Maintenance Committee, report of progress to date, and making plans for regular monthly meetings that we can advertise the way we do everything else, and they're just set on the calendar. Does our Maintenance Committee want to give I know that there have been fits and starts, but there have been some.
Well, the first thing to report out is progress since our last meeting. You know, the biggest issue that we addressed was lighting on site. I actually, you may remember, left this meeting a month ago to go walk some sites with a lighting contractor. Got kind of a bad report from that day, where basically we have 3 types of lighting on site. We have some city lighting, we have some power company lighting, and we have some CRHA lighting. And as we looked, it was primarily the city lighting and the power company lighting were in pretty good shape, and it was our own lighting that was in worst of shape. And they prepared a proposal to replace that lighting. I had it forwarded to Mr. Duffield, and he pulled the trigger on it immediately, so that I can, at this point, report back that I believe 54 lights were replaced. There's 3 or 4 that had issues getting power to the site where the existing light was, so there were a couple others that Mr. Duffield was going to take a look at to see what we felt like the perceived need was. But overwhelmingly, you know, I think you could say 95% of the work was done since we last met, and should be in place and working.
Well,
Beyond
not
that,
on First Street.
no.
I mean, they put a light on the porch of the community center.
These were all wall packs, so big lights that were up.
I don't know what the purpose of that was,
Okay.
but the light in the parking lots are still black.
All right, we'll take a look at those. Somebody will. Beyond that, you know, we didn't. We have had a problem having meetings, and you know, I think there was some sense, the last time we really had a meeting, there was an idea that we would have a staff person that would be responsible for facilities in the very near future, and I think there was some sense that we would kind of wait for that person to provide some direction, and then when that hire wasn't made, you know, we didn't follow up as we should have, and I think we're still in a position where a facilities director or a more professional maintenance supervisor, somebody is going to be a key role, but beyond that, the committee was kind of inactive this month.
So how many people, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to know how many people are on that committee?
Yeah, it's not really particularly organized. We have, Latita and I had both attended the last official meeting, I guess, and Ms. Bell was there, and we discussed the idea that we would like a representative from every site, and she was to look into kind of trying to make that happen. I can't report on her progress.
Who was going to make that happen?
Sonia Bell?
So I
No,
like
she was the one resident that was at our meeting, so I congratulate her for that. I don't know what.
Yeah, I don't feel like that's her responsibility to make sure that every.
Well, if we're trying to solicit residents, the resident's a pretty good person.
I think she can help out with that, but I think that probably needs to be a part of that committee. Each one of y'all can take a site or something to figure out who y'all can get on that, but that shouldn't be her alone.
Good point.
I have some concerns that I wanted to address. When we first decided we were going to do the maintenance committee, we asked who wanted to be on the committee. That person was myself and Osteen, and Mr. Duffield would meet. So with that being said, when we asked for a committee meeting, we didn't have a committee meeting. The meeting was with Mr. Duffield and Mr. Osteen. We've had problems with scheduling and problems with not inviting all who are considered committee members to the meetings. And so going forth, I think that if we're going to be a committee and we're going to say that people are on the committee, we need to be notified in a timely manner, and we need to discuss dates if it's going to be any changes, changed as far as dates is concerned or as far as meeting is concerned, and we need to meet in the committee meeting to discuss those things to move forward. Those things are not being done.
So is maintenance staff being invited to these meetings?
I know staff, the first meeting I went to, staff was there. I can't speak for the other meetings because I wasn't there.
So I would like to suggest that in my experience on the board with the Housing Authority to date, those committees that we set a standing date for actually meet and make progress. And so if you all are interested, I think it might behoove us to set this committee meets the third Wednesdays of every month at, 4:00 p.m. I'm making that up, but a standing time that works for you all. And then we may ask Mr. Duffield to give us dedicated staff who can help coordinate, get the word out about those meetings, collect concerns to bring to the meetings. And then maintenance staff will have that on their calendar, so at least somebody can be there if we can get that standing time. What do you think that would serve the committee well?
So what's the purpose of the committee if we're gonna have one person doing all of the work of the committee? And so that's kind of like my concern. We have a maintenance committee that was supposed to meet because so many concerns was too much for one person to deal with. So we was going to come together, collect input, and have conversation, and talk about the things that needed to be talked about and move forward with progress, or identify some things that needed to be changed. That's not happening. Mr. Duffield and Osteen's having meetings and then coming back and saying, okay, well, we didn't have time, or we just got notified last minute, or and I'm like, well, what about these people got to be notified, so forth and so on. Well, we met and then this is what we propose, and this is what we want to do. That's not a committee.
I totally agree with you.
And if we want to change a date, or we want to say, okay, well, let's just do this once a month, or let's just do it this way, then as a committee, we should have met and talked about that first. I don't think that,
well, I guess
you saying we should make these standing dates. we haven't had any input from FAR.
I'm making a suggestion to the two of you who are in charge of the committee that you consider with whomever it seems appropriate, and most including FAR, a standing meeting time, and that you figure that out and bring it back to the board and the staff so that we can help organize and staff that committee to make sure those notifications go out as you requested, so that it's not ad hoc from month to month, because that does get confusing.
So we're gonna staff a committee, so the committee is gonna staff a committee.
I mean, do you not want to have the committee anymore?
I mean, I think we need the committee. I'm just saying if we're gonna have the committee, then we need to be clear on communication.
Yes, so
One.
what would you like to suggest to make it better going forward?
I mean, send an email out. Why do we have to have a staff, why do we have to create a whole new staff just to get a meeting date? Or
So
if-
as chair of that committee, when are you going to send the email out?
I'm not the chair of the committee. We don't have a chair on the committee.
Well, the committee needs a chair, yes.
I would think.
Okay, that makes sense. I tell you, I've got enough stuff going on. I'm happy not to be on the committee, so I'm happy for, Latita to be our board rep to that committee and organize it just as she envisions. Sounds great.
I'm okay with that.
So what do you need to be successful as a chair of maintenance committee?
Well, the committee is just me, Brandon, and Grant now. So, I mean, same thing as before. We just need to have clear communication, and we need to be able to establish what's going to happen, and everybody needs to get the information so that everybody can have input, so that decisions are made by everybody and not just two people. Or, I mean, even with the maintenance staff needs to be able to give their input. We can't just, say, okay, well, we're going to deal with this, this, and this, and we don't have the flip side to what they see. They're the ones that's actually out there doing the work and being involved with the residents and the calls and so forth and so on. So, I mean, even if we send out emails for Brandon, Grant, and myself, maintenance need to be notified that they have to be there too, or somebody, a representative from the maintenance staff. I know before the other guy left, what was his name, Grant? He came to the first meeting, and then after that, I don't know who came.
I can commit that we'll have maintenance staff at the maintenance committee meetings, sure.
I hear that residents really want to be able to attend and give input as well. Do you think that you'll be able to set a standing time? So like resident services, we can advertise and say, this is a good time for residents who want to share maintenance concerns specifically?
Well, the thing is, you can't set a standing time if you don't know what everybody is available for. So that was the purpose for sending out dates and then getting a response back for whatever date was good for each other. As Osteen said, he has a lot of stuff going on. So does a resident, so does Brandon, so does Grant. So I don't think that right now we should commit to a standing time for a meeting until we've had that conversation in a committee meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to imply that you would make it up right now. I meant you as chair work with those folks to find a standing time. Do you think that that's feasible?
We can have that conversation.
Okay. If you all have that conversation and let us know, that would be great. I do believe back when we created the maintenance committee that this board just did discuss and outline a basic charge for the committee. And if you, Mr. Duffield, perhaps you could pull from the minutes what we laid that out to be, and that might be some guidance going forward.
Yep.
And I also think that board representation is really important on this committee, and I hear Mr. Osteen saying he's taking over a lot of other responsibilities. Are there other board members who would like to serve on this committee and work with Latita?
I would.
I was going to say, I'm staring right at you, Ms. Slaughter.
I would.
Oh, thank you. So, as chair member, I will say Ms. Slaughter is now an additional board member to work with you, Latita, on the maintenance committee. Thank you. Other thoughts, comments? If you have ideas of brilliance, we'd love to have them.
So mine's just to move on to the executive director's report.
All right, let's get to the executive director's report. Brilliant's coming.
Right.
And then I was just gonna say, because we have a standing resident services committee and a standing redevelopment committee, we have those updates then regularly at our board meeting. So if when there is a regular maintenance committee meeting, we'll then make sure you have the opportunity to give those updates here, and part of the communications of keeping everybody set and on the same page. Does that work for you?
Well, I think we've been doing that anyway, because you've always had committee check-ins.
Okay, just checking to make sure that that's part of the thinking. Okay, sorry, executive director's report is behind tab 5, Mr. Duffield.
Right. Thank you, Chairwoman Jones, members of the commission. Behind tab 5 is the executive director's report for the period September 25th to October 19th, 2018. Things to note, sort of the key areas that have been spending time on in site and community safety planning, the annual plan and 5-year plan process, unit turns and occupancy efforts, taking a fair amount of time. Working closely and excited about this with Region 10 on Medicaid expansion. Medicaid enrollment opens November 1st to additional populations, and we feel like there's a tremendous opportunity to outreach to the public housing and HCV community. And then, of course, redevelopment and modernization support been key. Some of the other key items in the next page, page 2, the CRHA, we're working very diligently with FAR, Habitat for Humanity, UVA, and Piedmont Housing Alliance, and submitting a grant proposal to the CRHA Foundation. It's taken a fair amount of effort. The gist of the grant is to better community health within public housing and low-income communities within Charlottesville. We've been through 2 cycles of the grant process and are fairly optimistic about funding. We have finalizing the key fob system controls in Crescent Halls. That work should wrap up this week, which would allow residents to use their entry cards to get in and out of the community room and the community center as needed. We've got a draft Section 3 policy we've received from Motivation Inc., Keith Swiney. That is a policy that's currently under staff review and sharing with FAR to get their comments. We'll bring that back to the board for discussion in November. Completed our REACT efforts for Crescent Halls. Working also on a Pay for Success project proposal in partnership with Virginia, VHDA, and local partners. This may include some of the Financial Opportunities Center elements that we talked about in the relocation principles piece. It's a really unique opportunity, and Charlottesville is fortunate to have been selected to participate in that. Let's see. The environmental services at Levy-Avon, as Mr. Norris discussed, officially got underway today. Claudette Green, our Housing Services Director, will join our staff on November 1st, and we are excited to see that come together. As we look into the financials, we'll just stop at page 3, the overall roll-up. Year to date, we are running expenditures in excess of revenue at this point in the year. That is largely due to the fact that we've got capital dollars that need to transfer back into the operating budget. We've made expenditures on capital and have not transferred those funds in. Similarly, we've got redevelopment dollars from the city that we need to draw down to address personnel costs or Mr. Norris's position and other. So at this point, the 6 months through the year, having been through our REACT preps and the gearing up, staffing up for that, the fact that we haven't transferred dollars, we show a deficit at this point of just under $25,000 for the year. However, we have every expectation that in the coming 6 months, without the recurring REACT expenses and with the infusion from capital and redevelopment, that will absolutely correct itself. The back of the package, last couple pages on, I'm sorry. In the executive director's report is a memo that outlines turns, vacancies, evictions, and TARs. Only I did not include the spreadsheet for the TARs, the tenants' accounts receivable section. I'm sorry. But this is, I think, the information that Ms. Talbert's requested in the past, and I hope this helps address some of the concerns. For the reporting period, September 23rd through October 19th, we've completed 19 turns, okay, that not including internal transfers. We've done 4 internal transfers as well. That requires a turn service, but we didn't include that in this number. Of the 19, 6 new families have moved in. We have 5 new families that are currently scheduled to move in. And then the remaining 8 units we've made lease officers and are waiting for, made lease offers to waiting list participants. We're waiting for them to sign up for lease briefing. Overall, at this point in time, we have 33 vacant units. Of the 33, 19 of the units are offline substantial rehabs. Of the 14 remaining units, we anticipate having at least turning 8 of those within the coming month. Finally getting this sort of outstanding occupancy issues hopefully in hand. On the next page, UDs and evictions. During the reporting period, CRHA issued 7 unlawful detainers. We've had no evictions during the reporting period. Of the 7 UDs, 2 have paid in full, 2 have entered repayment programs, and 3 have had their cases continued. Again, I'm sorry I failed to include the TARS spreadsheet, but I will forward that to the commission first thing in the morning so you can review that as well.
And on that spreadsheet, is there a difference between sort of outstanding rent owed number and list of families in current repayment plans, or is that just family and repayment plans when you say TARS?
No, I think that is just total outstanding 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. It
Okay.
does not break out what portion of that debt is captured in repayment plans, although we can do that.
If it's possible to easily get
Yeah.
that report, I think we'd love to see sort of payment plans and progress being made by families on payment plans, as well as sort of total outstanding rent collections we need to
Good, yes.
track. Thank you. This is very helpful.
Before we move on, Mr. Duffield, I want to say thank you for making this happen for me.
Are there
Oh,
questions?
Commissioner Talbert, thank you.
You're welcome.
And do you have questions?
I don't, actually. I think he answered everything, and then the question I did have you asked. So,
I may come over there and kiss you.
Are you sure? I rely on you to be my question.
I am not giving a show.
All right.
It's on another Monday night.
Are there questions or comments for Mr. Duffield based on the executive director's report or the financials? Right. Well, I want to say kudos to staff for doing as many turns as they did. I want to continue to challenge staff to keep the turns happening quickly. Be really great to get a lot of families in a home for the holidays. So, thank you. Okay. Other business? Does anyone have any other business they'd like to bring to us tonight that we haven't covered? No, we are busy bees. We don't.
Oh, I do.
Yes,
I do.
ma'am.
Residents at Crescent Hall are concerned of the whereabouts of the remaining of the furnishings.
Yep.
For the breezeway.
Yep. That is good. Let me get on that. I'll get a answer to you. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Our next meetings are as follows. Tomorrow is a redevelopment committee meeting at 12 noon at South First Street, and they are regularly scheduled every Tuesday at those times. There's a resident services committee meeting on Thursday, November 8th at 1 p.m. at the 6th Street Community Center. Our next meeting will be here on the 26th. The meetings we scheduled tonight included a work session on November 19th. I forgot the time already, 10 a.m. And we are going to get back to you about dates for a joint meeting with City Council. We're going to get back to Wes with the date of the Safety Committee meeting. We will keep you posted as to if and when the next meeting with the police chief is, just so you know that that is happening. And we will be looking forward to a maintenance committee meeting being scheduled. What else am I missing?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
We still have yet to make a meeting for the personnel committee.
And we need to make a personnel committee meeting. If you two ladies wait 2 seconds, we'll make it as soon as I adjourn this.
All right, that's fine.
Okay. We have time.
I'll also have an email to the board looking at a mock MOU draft of an MOU between Housing Authority and City Staff. I mean, and CPD.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you. And we can pull the old one as well, I'm sure.
We don't know where it is.
Hopefully it's somewhere in our office. Okay. It's on a file somewhere. Mr. Duffield, did you want to state briefly the status of our moves and our office spaces?
Yeah, we are moving offices. My office has moved out of downstairs. We will have the remainder of our offices targeting November 1 to be out of the building.
So your office is now
Down at South First Street.
at South First Street,
Yep.
and some of the other folks have moved to Crescent Halls.
They are moving, some will move to Crescent Halls, yeah.
We have a property manager on site now at West Haven.
That's correct. Yep.
And where will our new housing manager live?
I'm sorry?
Where-
They'll live at Crescent Halls.
At Crescent Halls for now.
Yeah.
Great. So the downstairs office will no longer be a CRHA office in City Hall as of next Thursday.
That's right.
So.
Yeah.
Awesome. We have opportunity for public comments.
Hi, Brandon Collins. I work for FAR, Public Housing Association of Residents, 434-984-3255. Give us a call. I also wanted to just chime in on really happy to see the progress made on turns. We are still deeply concerned about maintenance and the effect that has on residents. And, they really need some kind of tangible, real progress on their maintenance issues. And I know maybe some of that's not really happening because there's been such a focus on vacancies and making these turns happen. But definitely appreciate the report. Hope to see those reports coming and hope to continue to see progress. But that's feeling pretty good about that. Did want to mention on the maintenance committee, there is a charge that you all passed. I gave it to Mr. Osteen a while back now. Off the top of my head, it also established membership for that committee, and I believe it was by amps, like as far as the residents that were supposed to be there. And I think we had agreed that FAR would, appoint those folks or somehow find a way to participate in that. And then the conversation kind of shifted towards, let's try to include as many residents as possible as long as they're willing to come and do the work and be consistent and make things happen. It also outlined some priorities for the committee, and one of those was a maintenance schedule within a number of months, and I'm sure that time has expired. Part of why that might have been put on hold was because you had a contractor come in that was supposed to sort of give a really good analysis of the maintenance needs of the housing authority, and that turned out to be not very good work on their part, and so that was kind of put on hold. But I think that kind of maintenance schedule is desperately needed by this housing authority. I don't know how much longer you can wait to hire somebody that can kind of spearhead that, and I know everybody's at a diminished capacity, but that kind of organization I think really needs to get in place sooner than later, whether or not you have the proper staff in place. We really want to see that proper staff in place. Maintenance, facilities manager, management level person, make sure you pay them what they're worth. Hopefully they're worth a lot. We're really excited to see housing manager come on board, and again, we really hope that that's going to show something for residents that they can hold in their hand, because every time somebody comes to me and says, what is FAR doing for residents and maintenance? What are you doing for me? And I say, well, we're working on putting a committee together. That's not cutting it, and it's just getting harder and harder. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other comments? Thank you all. With that, we are adjourned.
Thank you. Ms. Talbert.